the name of guilds, brotherhoods, friendships, and truce they staffs mean hotels in Russia, estates in Serbia and Turkey, Amkari in Georgia, and so on, took such a formidable development in medieval times and played such an important part in the emancipation of the cities. But it took historians more than 60 years before the universality of this institution and its true characters were understood. Only now, when hundreds of guild statutes have been published and studied, and their relationship to the Roman collegia and the earlier unions in Greece and in India, very interesting facts related to the universality of guilds will be found in 2000 Years of Guild Life by Reverend G. M. Lambert Hull, 1891, on the Georgian Amkari, C.S. Egiazarov, Gorodskiye, Zeki, Organization of Transcaucasian Amkari, in Memoirs of the Caucasian Geographical Society, 14th to 1891, is known. Can we maintain with full confidence that these brotherhoods were but a further development of the same principles which we saw at work in the gens and the village community? Nothing illustrates better these medieval brotherhoods than those temporary guilds which were formed on board ships. When a ship of the Hansa had accomplished her first half-day passage after having left the port, the captain (Schiffer) gathered all crew and passengers on the deck and held the following language as reported by a contemporary. "As we are now at the mercy of God and the waves," he said, "each one must be equal to each other, and as we are surrounded by storms, high waves, pirates, and other dangers, we must keep a strict order that we may bring our voyage to a good end. That is why we shall pronounce the prayer for a good wind and good success, and according to marine law we shall name the occupiers of the judges' seats (Schuffenstellen). Thereupon the crew elected a Vogt and 4 Scabini to act as their judges. At the end of the voyage the Vogt and the Scabini abdicated their functions and addressed the "What has happened on board ship" with crew as follows: "Must pardon to each other and consider as dead (tond und absent lassen). What we have judged right was for the sake of justice. This is why we beg you all, in the name of honest justice, to forget all the animosity one may nourish against another, and to swear on bread and salt that he will not think of it in a bad spirit. If anyone, however, considers himself wrong, he must appeal to the Lang Vogt and ask justice from him before sunset." On landing, the stock with the Fred fines was handed over to the Vogt of the seaport for distribution among the poor. G. de Wunderred's Reisebericht in Fischer Frankfurter Archiv, Second 245, quoted by Janssen, Geschichte des Deutschen Volks, First 335. This simple narrative, perhaps better than anything else, depicts the spirit of the medieval guilds. Like organizations came into existence wherever a group of men, fishermen, hunters, traveling merchants, builders, or settled craftsmen came together for a common pursuit. Thus there was on board ship the naval authority of the captain, but for the very success of the common enterprise, all men on board, rich and poor, masters and crew, captain and sailors, agreed to be equals in their mutual relations, to be simply men bound to aid each other and to settle their possible disputes before judges elected by all of them. So also when a number of craftsmen, masons, carpenters, stonecutters, etc., came together for building, say, a cathedral, they all belonged to a city which had its political organization, and each of them belonged moreover to his own craft, but they were united besides by their common enterprise, which they knew better than anyone else, and they joined into a body united by closer although temporary bonds. They founded the guild for the building of the cathedral. Dr. Leonard Hennen, Der Domsuchung historisch Etlingut, 1871, pages 46-50. We may see the same till now in the Kabylian Kof. See previous chapter. The Kabbalists have their village community, but this union is not sufficient for all political, commercial, and personal needs of union, and the closer brotherhood of the Kof is constituted. As to the social characters of the medieval guild, any guild statute may illustrate them. Taking for instance the Skra of some early Danish guild, we read in it first a statement of the general brotherly feelings which must reign in the guild. Next come the regulations relative to self-jurisdiction in cases of quarrels arising between two brothers, or a brother and a stranger, and then the social duties of the brethren are enumerated. If a brother's house is burned, or he has lost his ship, or has suffered on a pilgrim's voyage, all the brethren must come to his aid. If a brother falls dangerously ill, 2 brethren must keep watch by his bed till he is out of danger, and if he dies, the brethren must bury him, a great affair in those times of pestilences, and follow him to the church and the grave. After his death they must provide for his children. If necessary, very often the widow becomes a sister to the guild. Kofford Anscher Omgal Dansk Gilder og deres Undergang, Copenhagen, 1785, Statutes of a New Guild. These 2 leading features appeared in every brotherhood formed for any possible purpose. In each case the members treated each other as, and named each other brother and sister. Upon the position of women in guilds, see Miss Toulmin Smith's introductory remarks to the English guilds of her father. One of the Cambridge Statutes (page 281) of the year 1503 is quite positive in the following sentence: "This statute is made by the common assent of all the brethren and sisters of All Hallows Guild." All were equals before the guild. They owned some chattel (cattle, land, buildings, places of worship, or stock) in common. All brothers took the oath of abandoning all feuds of old, and without imposing upon each other the obligation of never quarrelling again, they agreed that no quarrel should degenerate into a feud or into a lawsuit before another court than the tribunal of the brothers themselves, and if a brother was involved in a quarrel with a stranger to the guild, they agreed to support him for bad and for good, that is, whether he was unjustly accused of aggression or really was the aggressor. They had to support him and to bring things to a peaceful end, so long as his was not a secret aggression, in which case he would have been treated as an outlaw. The brotherhood stood by him. In medieval times only secret aggression was treated as a murder. Blood revenge in broad daylight was justice, and slaying in a quarrel was not murder, once the aggressor showed his willingness to repent and to repair the wrong he had done. Deep traces of this distinction still exist in modern criminal law, especially in Russia. If the relatives of the wronged man wanted to revenge the offense at once by a new aggression, the brotherhood supplied him with a horse to run away, or with a boat, a pair of oars, a knife, and a steel for striking light. If he remained in town, 12 brothers accompanied him to protect him, and in the meantime they arranged the composition. They went to court to support by oath the truthfulness of his statements, and if he was found guilty they did not let him go to full ruin and become a slave through not paying the due compensation. They all pay it, just as the gents did in olden times. Only when a brother had broken the faith towards his guild brethren or other people, he was excluded from the brotherhood with a nothing's name (Vad skall han meles afbrödskap med nidingsnaft). Kofford Anker LC. This old booklet contains much that has been lost of by later explorers. Such were the leading ideas of those brotherhoods which gradually covered the whole of medieval life. In fact, we know of guilds among all possible professions. Guilds of serfs They played an important part in the revolts of the serfs, and were therefore prohibited several times in succession in the second half of the 9th century. Of course the king's prohibitions remained a dead letter. Guilds of freemen, and guilds of both serfs and freemen. Guilds called into life for the special purpose of hunting, fishing, or a trading expedition, and dissolved when the special purpose had been achieved, and guilds lasting for centuries in a given craft or trade, and in proportion as life took an always greater variety of pursuits, the variety in the guilds grew in proportion. So we see not only merchants, craftsmen, hunters, and peasants united in guilds, we also see guilds of priors, painters, teachers of primary schools and universities, guilds for performing the passion play, for building a church, for developing the mystery of a given school of art or craft, or for a special recreation, even guilds among beggars, executioners, and lost women, all organized on the same double principle of self-jurisdiction and mutual support. The medieval Italian painters were also organized in guilds, which became at a later epoch academies of art. If the Italian art of those times is impressed with so much individuality that we distinguish even now between the different schools of Padua, Bassano, Treviso, Verona, and so on, although all these cities were under the sway of Venice, this was due, G. Paul Richter remarks, to the fact that the painters of each city belonged to a separate guild, friendly with the guilds of other towns, but leading a separate existence. The oldest guild statute known is that of Verona, dating from 1303, but evidently copied from some much older statute. Fraternal assistance in necessity of whatever kind hospitality towards strangers when passing through the town, as thus information may be obtained about matters which one may like to learn, and obligation of offering comfort in case of debility are among the obligations of the members (19th century, November 1890 and August 1892). For Russia we have positive evidence showing that the very making of Russia was as much the work of its hunters, fishermen and traders artels as of the budding village communities, and up to the present day the country is covered with artels.